Hello everyone, my name is Antony Cummins and I'm a historical researcher and author on things samurai and ninja in Japan. And today we're going to talk about a computer game called Sekiro. Now, first of all, you should know this. I have no knowledge of computer games whatsoever. Zero. I am useless at computer games. I don't know how to plug in a SCART to a amplifier to a whatever. Do you know, that's how I can't even joke about it. I know that little about computer games. So I have never played this game and I've simply watched run-throughs. However, the other night a voice came to me in my sleep. It was an angelic voice and it was the voice of Metatron, the word of God. And he said to me in the dreams, Antony, do a follow-up to my video. So if you've not seen Metatron's video, the links will be below. And this is exactly what he looked like. Antony, make a video or die. Tell them about Nobunaga. Or tell them about Maru and the things I didn't include in my video. Go, do it now, my son. Okay, right, so let's get on with it. So, why can I tell you about Japanese castles and how do we know what I'm saying is true? Okay, basically, I am part of a translation team and we've put together this, which is Samurai Arms, Armour and the Tactics of Warfare. This is part 2 of a series, that's part 1. And basically, this was written, both of them were written in the 1600s by a master tactician. And there's a section in there on Japanese castles and construction. So the words I'm about to tell you in this video are from a samurai war tactician from the 1600s. So he knows what he's talking about. So I'll do more information on that at the end. So let's have a quick chat. How can we say what's real and what's not real in this game? Basically, it's okay that it's a fantasy game. Absolutely okay. In fact, I think all historical Japanese games should be fantasy games because there's that much witchcraft in old Japan and monsters and demons that you couldn't really do a game historically correct or film without it. It just wouldn't be right. Second is it is based in Japan and it's got to have some realism, hasn't it? It's got to be based on something. So without further ado, let's go to our first point. Now, the first thing that I realised, guys, is the absence of shinobi gayashi. Now, that basically means spikes to stop infiltrators. However, as I said, that these castles in this game are a little bit oversized for the time and sometimes complex. But actually, even on such castles, you would have these spikes. They're either made of iron or they're made of bamboo. And they're on houses, they're on basically walls, they're on fences. It's something that's now missing from Japan, but which was everywhere at the time. It's the same as we have railings everywhere. They would have iron spikes or bamboo spikes. And the shinobi have specific ways of cutting these or of getting over them. But they're kept in the secret manuals and quite interesting sometimes. Okay, so I spoke to my friend and he's called Stephen Nojiri. You can follow him on YouTube and he does some great videos on Japanese culture. And he's a bit of a geek, to be honest. He's a real geek. And he went off and he looked at the names in the computer game and he said, okay, this computer game is based somewhere around 1589. That's the time he thinks it's based. One of the most interesting things about Japanese castles, which many people don't realise, is the difference in height between these. Can you see you've got triangular ones that are lower and you've got rectangular ones which are higher. The triangular ones are for guns. The rectangular ones are for arrows. And again, you get circular ones which are for guns. Now, there's a reason why there are different heights. I'll give you this here. What's missing from this image is a platform. Traditionally, in old Japan, they would have a platform that a guy sat on. Because in Japan, in castle defense, samurai would sit down while shooting a gun. They do not stand up. I'm not saying they never do. They either sit down or half squat or squat on one leg back on a platform. Obviously, please excuse the drawing here. It's a little bit abstract, but you get the point. So these samurai would sit down with muskets or arquebuses as they were known then. And these guys would be past guns. Somebody would be behind them putting in ammunition and giving them the guns. That's why the triangles are lower. They're lower than the rectangles because the rectangles were for archers who could again either half kneel up, like you sometimes see Japanese archers on their, one leg up, one leg down, or they would stand up. Now, these again would be on platforms. So that's why the gun ports are lower. You can see the triangles are lower, and the arrow ports, which are the thinner, longer ones, are higher because of the stance that is used by the warriors shooting both bows and guns. It's a big difference. So I've just done the standing one there, but you also get like a half squat where you can see his back leg is up, and he's basically going to prepare for his bow. Now there are variations on this and differences on this because of the different schools and the different traditions. But there is a set rule here: is that you shoot lower with a gun and higher with a bow, and that means you can get more trajectory, and that is pretty much uniform across all the castles. That's why you have a height difference. Now, as I said, it's late Sengoku period in this game, and we're trying to find at least some reality in the actual world setting. So is it like old Japan? Now, what we've got is a big problem here, is because Japanese castles are not what you expect in the warring period. So there are different types of castle. For example, there is a forward enclosure that you build in a few days, which has no bells and no gongs and no roofs, and it's just put up with wooden stakes and palisades, and that's used in territory to keep your men safe. You then build semi-permanent locations, which are obviously have got little roofs on, gates, you've got a bell up there, and you're going to keep it there for a couple of years while you're at war with X clan. And that's not a castle as you would imagine it, i.e. it's made of earth, compacted earth, it's got palisades on it, it's got in and out gates, but it's not how you imagine. It's probably blackened or burnt wood on the outside to make it, resistant against the elements. But on the whole, it is not a castle as you expect. However, most castles in the Sengoku period are like this. They are absolutely out in the wilderness, in the mountains, in other people's territories, on controlling routes. They are built temporarily so you can move your men in there and out to different fortresses and attack people. You then get permanent bases, which are near like towns. Some of the oldest towns in Japan have no castles. Like you look at Kamakura, it just had defensive mansions, if you like. But castles were built in a much more Motte Bailey-esque palisades with spikes, old style. And they've obviously all disintegrated now or been pulled down. We just don't have them anymore. But what happens is a guy called Oda Nobunaga changes all that. He absolutely changes it. And before his time, you get lots of massive castles, but there are lots of earthworks, spikes, and the stuff in the game's correct, where you get the walls with the tiles on and the plaster. That's all fine, but you very rarely get a central keep. You pretty much get an outline of circles, if you like, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. So you get these circles, and they can be huge and over rugged areas and mountains, but Nobunaga is the first one to really make massive stone fortifications. I'm not saying stone didn't exist before him, it did, but he literally pulled down statues, smashed up buildings, and made these massive fortifications in Azuchi Castle, and basically made the first true central keep, or tenshu. And it's the first keep in all Japan that is solid, massive. He's got luxury apartments in it. It is a status symbol and a war sort of it's realistic in warfare, basically. And from that point on, and that was in the 1570s. From that point on, it gets very complicated in castle construction, and you get these massive castles like you see. And then towards the end of the warring periods and into the Tokugawa period, basically they strip back all the other castles. All these little castles dotted about Japan, they burn them all down, rip them all down, and allow people to have one castle in one domain on flat land in the city centre. So this idea of these big, massive, whitewashed castles with big stone fortifications are a very, very late Sengoku period thing and a very early Edo period thing. Now, that doesn't mean it's incorrect in the game, but it's a little bit too advanced for the time it's supposedly in. In truth, then or around then was only the development of these massive castles. They would be brand new in this game, basically. If this game was at 1589, they would be brand new. Okay, a question for you guys. There should be stone dropping ports. I'm going to now put a picture of stone dropping ports up. So basically, these ports are put there so that samurai can go in and drop stones, but also they can give crossfire to anybody walking around underneath or anybody trying to climb the castle. Remember, these people are trying to climb the castle wall, and they open up these and they drop down, and they've got a special stance where their toes go inwards, so the musket drops down and it can be shoot from either here or from the hips, and then they shoot people climbing up. So you've got a crossfire. So that's why you can sometimes see them on the edges. I'll put it again. Basically, guys, you drop stones down here, but also not only do you drop stones, you actually shoot out of these. But what I want to say is this is not only here, these are also on outer walls. So my point here is about outer walls. But as you can see, there's the trajectory of where you can actually shoot your gun, and it covers quite a big area across there. Now, of course, there's specific ways you can do this, and of course you can drop from these ports and shoot from there. And the idea here is it just covers all them, but those bits above are actually viewing ports as well. So you can see there, on the edges, they can crossfire in to the base as well as drop down. Does this happen in the game? Another thing is the viewing ports. Let's look at that picture again. The viewing ports here are all over the place, especially along the walls. So along the walls, what you do is you'd have the little shootout ports, the sally ports, the stone dropping ports, but you also have a little strip at the top, which has got like a Monty Python scene where the samurai go, that way, Bob, turn it left, arrows in, and he's like, move, move, move. And he can actually view and move and shout to the people below him and say, right, shoot left, shoot right, move further this way, this side, shoot more. And the people there can see what's going on, because those little viewing points don't give you a general overview. So you've got a cashier, a captain at the top shouting down the orders. I'm using this for convenience, guys, but I'm talking more about walls. But these are actually viewing ports where people open them up and have a look, and then show where the shooters at the smaller ports can shoot. So you can see there what I'm showing you, the shooting port and the viewing port. And you can drop and shoot from the viewing port, but they're also important so you can see what's going on. Now, I'm not sure about the gates in this game. I'm a little bit... These gates, let me show you a picture. That looks like an older period gate that isn't attached to this type of castle. I could be wrong here, guys, and I don't want to overstep my authority, if you like, but that to me looks like a gate from 50 years before, 100 years before, made in the wooden complexes, and that would be there. But it's been sort of bashed on to these castles where probably it's a little bit of a mix and match. That's not to say that didn't happen historically. I'm just trying to point out that often these gates would have a top bit. Let me tell you about it here. Basically, guys, this gets complicated because a lot of the times in these bigger castles, the gates are fully enclosed with stone on both sides, and at the top is like a little room. You can actually get steps going through the room, and that's so they can shoot down at you. And they've actually got guard rooms and guard spaces. So this looks a little incongruous here. It looks a little bit out. I am not in any way saying that it isn't possible, it didn't happen in history, but most likely what they've done here is got some gates, some great historical architecture, but bolted it onto the side of a larger castle. And that might be because somebody put it on in peace times, but it doesn't look like a war gate, this, or it looks like an earlier version. But normally there's no defensive qualities there from the top. Trees. Okay, trees. Now, there is a big thing here. This is about whether you are a good commander or a bad commander. A good commander will assess the castle layout, and he'll look around and he'll cut all the trees down. Now, it is absolutely recorded in historical documentation that shinobi will use trees as cover, and they'll get in trees, they'll go through the bushes, they'll get as close as they can to walls. So it is good practice for a general to chop down all the trees. But if they don't, and they don't in time or they don't want to, the samurai, which have a spear, have you seen the ring on a samurai spear? It's a little ring there. That is for tying two things to it. Either a marker for battle. So when you go into battle, you've got a little marker. It's like it can be any shape. It can be paper. It can be ribbons, feathers, eagle feathers, things like that. They can say, look, this is me. But on the other hand, you can also tie torches to it. And then what you do is you look around the trees and all the light emanating off the torch can check for shinobi and behind, and then you can stab. So you can light the way and stab with a spear with a torch attached. So it is good practice to clear all castles of trees, and you use it as firewood for cooking. Absolutely. You can always grow more trees. You can't always keep your castle if the shinobi get in and burn it down. So it is good standard practice to chop down all trees in Japanese castles when at war. However, not everybody did this. Some people were like, I like that cherry blossom tree. It reminds me of the days I used to do X. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But you should just destroy them. One of the main issues I had with this sort of looking at this footage is the lights. I don't think the lights are correct. I can't tell you exactly how they would use it, but it doesn't look correct to me. So basically, lights are very specific in the historical manuals. However, most of the time they're talking about these temporary fortifications made out of wood. And what you would do is put the lights outside your castle. So before a shinobi even gets to the castle wall, there's two circles of light. There's actually a trench system with massive lights involved, which is basically a big tall wall with burning. They're just throwing all the wood from the trees they've already cut down. And then further beyond that, there's actually smaller fires that you dig into the ground and you put all the wood in and they burn for a few hours to give you some light, but you don't have to go out and check them. But then beyond that, you actually get listening scouts. So listening scouts, small fires, big fires, the wall will also have fires, but there's something called monkey fire. Let me explain monkey fire for you here. Okay guys, monkey fire. Basically, fire's expensive, and if you're in a prolonged siege and you don't know when the shinobi will come, it's expensive. So what they do is they put torches on ropes, like the fireproof ropes, get a metal ring and they put a torch and they lower it down. You can see they're lowering it to all the crevices. Anywhere where there is a dark spot and shinobi will hide, they drop monkey fire and then they pull it back up and then go to the next stage and put it back down again. Now, spiked fences and pathways. Let's have a quick look at the spiked fences I'm talking about. So basically, I'm not sure about these in this game. These are historically accurate in the sense that they did make these types of things. In fact, there are tons and tons of different types of fences, loads of them, to the point where you're like, why have you got such detailed records on fences? But they've got loads of them, made of bamboo, diamond-shaped, crisscross, half, there's tons of them. So basically, these are really there, but actually these should be more on the outside, and they should be in a series of pathways, so that what the enemy are faced with are proper big spikes and a row of spikes that you can't see past them, and loads of rows of them. But actually, if you know your way through, you can go all the way through and get inside, but this will be covered by the top bits which are shooting at it. So basically, you're going to have men ready with bows and with guns, and then you're going to make sure the enemy have to go through all these different pathways to get there. And those pathways are a little bit like a labyrinth and normally set with caltrops or other traps, pitfall traps. They have a selection of caltrops tied to a string that they can lay down basically and then pick up in one go and move, and they change the pathway every night, and then you get people to act as guides to go through it. So actually, while these look historically accurate, they're totally in the wrong place and they don't really fit the way a castle should be. This is a big subject, guys, and I do apologise for this one because it would take too long to do. But these don't fit exactly with this idea. So basically, especially in smaller castles, you've got men, and you've got men who can chop down trees, and you've got bamboo. And what they do is they create pathways like this, and they'll put all these fences in. they'll bind them up, tie them. In fact, it's part of the Ashigaru, the foot soldiers' jobs, is to make these networks and pathways. And the idea is they make as many spiked fences as they can, portable ones in the ground, ones held up with rope. And these can be easily taken down by the enemy, but the enemy are going to get shot at while they try. So if the enemy have got two choices, basically, go through them and get shot, or try and pull them down and get shot. As you can see, they've got to go through. And sometimes they make complicated versions of this where you need a guide to take you through. Or it's just so much in your firing line that it's too difficult to do. My friend Stephen Nojiri thinks that here in the game, now remember we've both not played it, is that the castle layout doesn't look right. Now a castle layout is designed on concentric rings. So basically, the perfect castle has a tower in the middle, a fortification in the middle. It then has Maru number 1, Maru number 2, Maru number 3, Maru number 4, and etc. till you've finished. And what that means is a ring of walls, so a circular ring of walls. However, we know that the land doesn't allow for that. So what then happens in Japanese castle construction is you get the middle tower, the dungeon, the sort of keep in the middle. And then what happens is they try their best to fit it around. So sometimes you get an oblique wall. Sometimes you get a wall that goes through, rises up. It's called the Rising Dragon Wall, and it goes along the rocks. Other times it's got to go back down the bank. And what you end up with is lots of angles. Now, what the problem is here is, of course, they're still trying to get it in a ring, a maru, a circle, but it isn't. It's got angles, and it tries to fit with the landscape. But there's only one keep. Now, however, at the point where there's a gate or a section that comes together in the walls is a yagura. Now, a yagura is a turret. Now, we think of turrets slightly different, but actually it's the same principle. It's a point where you need to keep men on the top of the wall, but they need to be defended. So let me see if I can find in the pictures I've got a yagura here. So in the game, you should only really get one central keep and then multiple yagura. You shouldn't have multiple keeps. But Japanese castles do get complicated and have east enclosure, west enclosure. They have little palaces, but that's usually much later on. What we're talking about is in the warring periods. It's simple. It's much, much more simple back then. Right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. My name's Antony Cummins. As I say, I don't have any understanding of computer games. I've heard that this game is amazing. I've heard it's one of the best games that's been out recently. I've heard it's had great reviews. I wish I had the patience to play computer games. I'd love to play it. I don't mind that it's fantasy. I think that's wonderful. That's no problem whatsoever. As I say, I think you should have fantasy in games. But, of course, if you're going to base it in reality, let's try and make it real. So if you want further information, then please help support me by getting a copy of Samurai Arms, Armor and the Tactics of Warfare. This is book number 2, but you can read it totally on its own. However, book number 1 is the Book of Samurai, book 1, Fundamental Teachings. These are the collected scrolls of Natori Ryu. So Natori Ryu is an ancient school of warfare that is literally about castle design and all that sort of stuff. So please do get yourself a copy of these. I'll put a link in the description below. But if you're really interested in ninja, then these are your two that you want. One is the Book of Ninja. This is a translation of the Bansen Shukai. It's one of the oldest, most complete ninja manuals there are. And then what I did is I created this, which is an easy to understand, basically how to become a ninja yourself, like that. And that is called Ninja Skills by Antony Cummins. Please do support me and get yourself some copies of the books. That would be wonderful. Before I go, I've got one final thing to say. Now, I was in a documentary called Ninja Shadow Warriors, basically. And there's something in the game. Let me show you this picture. Now, as you can see, this guy's not got his armour on, but he's got the bits that cross over. Now, this is the first time I've seen this in a game or in a film, and it made me think, have they taken this from the documentary I did, which is where you distinctly see just the crossover without the dough, without the body armour. And the reason this happens in the documentary is because I was on set at the documentary and the Japanese guy who's doing the costume had misunderstood the word togiki, which means outside listening scouts. And these guys are pretty much sometimes blind, actually, and just sit in the bushes and listen for shinobi. Now, he brought these random costumes from like court life and guards at court, and I was like, they are totally the wrong costume. So we had to make something up quickly, and I said, well, get someone in normal armor but take their door off because they're meant to be silent. I don't know if it's historically accurate, but they're not going to be sat there in like rocket chinking armor like this, chink chink chink. So I said we need to have them in combat something, but they're not going to be in full armor. So I just, on the spur of the moment, we only had a few hours to film it, we just had to make this up because he brought the wrong costume. And I wondered, has this game copied that? Not mistake, but that just quick, like ad hoc solution to a problem. And now has it gone into sort of the world of samurai warfare, or the world of that, which might be not my fault, but the fault from this documentary of me saying, listen, we can't have this, let's just make something from what we've got. Right, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. It would be really funny if that has entered into computer game world, because I had pretty much an argument with this old Japanese man who brought the wrong costume and we had to just make something on the fly. So if it is from that, somebody tell me. Of course, if anybody at the computer game company sees this video, it would be wonderful. Contact me. Let's make a really full ninja game with all the most historical accurate things we can. Okay, guys, thank you very much.